It's April 19th, 2024, and I'm back with the most interesting articles in growth and marketing. What are we covering today? Adam Robinson, absolutely on fire, talking about 6 cents. Kieran Flanagan, talking about the challenges of scaling marketing because of the need to promote individual contributors. And we cover an article on partnerships and how to set them up correctly. So let's get started. All right, to get started, let's start with Adam Robinson's article. Adam is CEO of retention.com and RB2B. He starts his article by saying, last November, we bought 6 cents for 18,000 so we can compare it to Clearbait in our person level identity tool. Last week, our rep told us the renewal costs 55,000. That's quite an increase. Here are my 6 theories why they are 3xing our pricing and don't want us using their tool. Now, I'm not going to go into all the 6 theories, but a couple of them stood out to me. One, 6 cents knows their data is terrible. Now, I don't know if their data is terrible or not, so I don't have any opinion on that. But Adam definitely does. He says the good news for 6 cents is that our sales team thinks their data is so bad they won't use it. So there's that. The next point I thought was really interesting is 6 cents knows their third party intent signal isn't a buying signal. Content consumption doesn't equal purchase intent. Genius marketing makes you believe that it does. Now, I see this a lot out there right now that third party intent data is not a purchase signal. And I haven't seen any data on this. I would love to see the data. So if you're a provider of this data, show us, provide the data that shows us that it is a buying signal. And so we can all make an assessment of it. This seems like there should be an easy fix around this. Anyway, his takeaway is 6 cents doesn't want us to use their product. I can understand why. It's so bad that our sales team won't even use it, even though we paid $18,000 for it. Again, I don't have any opinion on 6 cents specifically, but one thing I do want to point out in this post, I love that Adam actually made this bold statement because one of the things, and I posted a video on this, is that we have to have enemies. Now, I'm not saying 6 cents is Adam's enemy, but low quality data should be. Data that doesn't lead to buying should be. And so one of the things in having an enemy, and if he's against that, is you have to make a statement against it. You have to say this isn't okay. And that's exactly what Adam's doing here. And he's getting huge engagement as a result. Next article, Kieran Flanagan posts. He's the CMO at Zapier, or is it Zapier? I don't know. It's Zapier or Zapier. It's kind of like SEMrush. Some people say SEMrush. Some people say SEMrush. I'm an SEMrush guy. But anyway, I'll go with Zapier. He says, scaling your marketing is incredibly hard. It's not for the reason most people think. The most common challenge for scaling marketing is saturating your main channels. Diversifying your channel mix when your top channels become saturated is very hard. I think we've all seen this before. You invest in the things that work, but eventually they plateau in terms of performance. You're just spending more on no additional revenue. And so what do? How do you get beyond that? And that's where the challenge comes in. But he raises another point, which is your work is being done by individual contributors. A great IC, individual contributor, is likely 3x as valuable as an average IC. A world-class IC is more like 5x or 8x. But we've taught people to progress in their careers, they must move into management and strategy as fast as possible. So what do we do about that? We've all seen this. Great individual contributors feel like they need to progress in their careers by getting promoted outside of actually doing the specific tactical work. Well, Kieran proposes marketing leaders should prioritize creating an environment where the best ICs can stay ICs as long as they enjoy the role. Give them more autonomy, remove blockers, don't load them up with mixed priorities, give them big and interesting projects to work on and let them go. I think this is a great point. If we look at football, for instance, what if Tom Brady could only be recognized or progress in his career if he became a coach? We would have missed out on the greatest quarterback there has ever been. No, we need to look at this. If there's someone is enjoying their role as an individual contributor, we have to find a way to allow them to stay in that role, excel, and be recognized. And so I'm really glad Kieran raised this point, and we should all think about what we can do to improve the jobs of individual contributors so they want to stay and excel at what they're really great at. The final article is the partnership advantage. And this is from Mark Withington and Sebastian Arrese. And he starts off by saying, Nearbound is a buzzword sweeping through the B2B landscape, shining as a beacon for those navigating the crowded areas of outbound spam and the endless churn of soulless SEO content, both amplified by AI. Nearbound is a bit of an ambiguous term, but the simplified meaning is a lead generation, demand generation, go to market focus on accounts and prospects that are warmer and already in your ecosystem. Typically, this means they have some knowledge of your solution, interact with your customers, or work with close partners or trusted voices. And partnership, ecosystem led growth is one of the most common components of a nearbound strategy, used to cut through the noise of today's demand generation environment. And so this is interesting. We've done a fair amount of work with partnerships in the past, and they walk through the process of setting these out. They set this framework for a lead generation partnership, which I think is interesting. But the most important thing here is not necessarily the individual elements within this, but it's the level of effort it requires to be successful with partnerships. And so here's his second point: partnership buy-in. This is a critical point in order for partnerships to work. You have to make sure that the partner is bought in at all levels. And so he talks about the leadership level, the sales team, and this is just so important because you can't make it work if people aren't thinking about the partnership. They're not bought into it. And then the next point you raise is go deep, really deep with partners. And the successful partnerships we've seen is exactly this. You have to have the resources in order to make the partnership work. It has to be really closely aligned. And so I think the biggest takeaway from this, I mean, I think the framework is interesting, but is the idea of how much work it takes to be successful with partnerships. It's Partnerships are one of those instances where I've seen like the highest expectations. Hey, we just signed this partner or we're working with this partner with the lowest actual results. And the reason for that is because the amount of work that it takes to make partnerships successful. And people just don't realize that. It's one thing to say we have a great partner, but to actually make it work is requires an investment. I mean, it can be very beneficial. I read an article the other day that some B2B SaaS companies are getting up to 30% of their revenue through partnerships. So it can work, but I think you have to go into it knowing about how much effort that goes into it. It's not just saying, "Hey, let's start with partnerships." It has to be thought of in a strategic way. So I appreciate articles like this that put some skin on the bones, some muscle on the bones of terms of what it actually means to be successful with partnerships. It's not just finding a partner, it's about putting that work in. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed 3 articles. Hope you found it interesting. Please leave any comments or thoughts in the comments, and I will see you next week.